5 minutes ago, a decision inside Windsor threatens to crack the monarchy's private war wide open. King Charles allegedly moves to give Harry the keys to Windsor Castle until Camilla stops it cold. Not a gentle suggestion. A hard interruption that turns a family moment into a public power struggle. Because keys aren't just metal. They're access, legitimacy, belonging. And if Harry gets them, it rewrites who is inside the crown's inner circle again. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The urgency is what makes it feel explosive. 5 minutes ago isn't a polished announcement or a carefully staged shift in protocol. It's the kind of moment that erupts faster than the palace can control it. 1 minute everything is supposedly contained behind closed doors. The next minute the word keys is hovering in the air like a lit match. Staff don't have time to rehearse a narrative. Advisors don't have time to draft language. All that exists is reaction, and reaction inside Windsor is never just emotion. It's power. Because what the keys symbolize is far bigger than access to a building. Windsor Castle isn't a casual home. It's a fortress of history, one of the crown's most protected symbols, and a living statement of who belongs close to the monarchy's center. Keys in this world are operational trust. They imply freedom of movement. They imply private entry. They imply that the person holding them is no longer a guest who must be managed, but a member whose presence is assumed. And that's exactly why the keys become a threat. The moment Harry holds them, the palace isn't just welcoming a son, it's legitimizing a return. That's why Charles' gesture lands as both emotional and politically dangerous. Emotionally, it reads like a father's reach, an attempt to pull a fractured relationship back from the edge. A king who has watched his family splinter, trying to prove he still has the power to repair. But politically, it's a loaded act. It would force everyone else to respond. It would pressure William's household. It would reshape internal hierarchy. It would signal to the world that Harry is back in a way no statement could undo. And once the world believes Harry is back, the palace cannot easily reverse it without looking chaotic, divided, or weak. Camilla's intervention is immediate, strategic, and most importantly public in its impact. Even if the confrontation happens out of sight, the effect is visible, the offer is stopped. The momentum breaks. Harry is left standing at the edge of a door that almost opened. And humiliation in royal life is rarely loud, it's structural. It's the quiet message that says, you are not allowed to cross this line. And you will be reminded of it in front of the people who matter. What makes Camilla's move feel especially sharp is that it doesn't read like a spouse gently advising caution. It reads like a veto. A hard boundary enforced in real time. That's why the room, in this story, would freeze. Because a veto doesn't just block Harry, it challenges Charles's authority over the one thing a king must control, who is permitted into the inner circle. If Charles cannot decide who gets keys to Windsor, then the monarchy's chain of control is exposed. And exposed chains are where crises begin. Then comes the detail that adds a darker layer. Someone tipped Camilla this was happening. Because in a household like this, nothing this sensitive should surprise the people at the top unless someone wants it to. A tip suggests anticipation. It suggests a network. It suggests that even before the offer was made, someone was watching, waiting, ready to stop it, or ready to exploit it. And that means the family moment wasn't simply personal, it was already political, already tracked, already vulnerable to interference. And the cliffhanger hits with a cold finality. The keys were already prepared, meaning this wasn't impulsive. That changes everything. Prepared keys suggest planning. Preparation suggests intent. Intent suggests conversations, approvals, and an internal pathway that led to this offer being ready at all. If the keys were waiting, then Charles wasn't just reacting to emotion. He was moving toward a decision that would have been permanent in effect, even if it wasn't announced. And now the palace has a new problem. Not just whether Harry gets access, But why the offer was on the table in the first place and who knew it was coming? Because once you introduce keys into a family war, you're no longer talking about forgiveness. You're talking about power, security, and legitimacy in physical form. But the real question isn't why Camilla stopped it, it's why Charles wanted Harry back inside Windsor in the first place. To outsiders, keys sound symbolic. Inside royal life, they're operational authority. Windsor keys can imply freedom of movement, private entry, and the unspoken privilege of being trusted near the Crown's most protected spaces. It's not about convenience, it's about who is allowed to exist close to the institution without supervision. That's why Camilla's resistance isn't petty, it's strategic defense of the palace's boundary. Because keys are implicit trust made physical. In a normal home, keys mean you can come and go. In a royal fortress, keys mean you're no longer treated like a visitor who must be escorted, scheduled, and watched. They mean you have the right to be there without asking. That's legitimacy in the purest form, silent, unquestioned, and incredibly difficult to reverse once granted. If Harry holds Windsor keys, the palace isn't just offering comfort, it's rewriting his status from outsider to insider, and that shift carries consequences that ripple through every other relationship in the family. Access shapes narratives faster than any official statement ever could. The moment someone has keys, people don't ask, are they back? They assume they are. He's back becomes fact. Not because the palace announced it, but because the palace allowed it. That's how royal storytelling works. Proximity creates meaning. Presence creates interpretation, and interpretation becomes headline reality, whether the palace likes it or not. Once the world believes Harry has regained free access to Windsor, any attempt to deny it later looks like chaos. Any attempt to revoke it looks like punishment. Either way, the monarchy bleeds control. That's the deeper palace fear access becomes precedent. And precedent becomes a cage. If the Crown grants keys, it sets a template for how far forgiveness goes and how quickly boundaries can be softened. It invites pressure in future crises because it signals that the right emotional moment can unlock institutional privileges. And the palace hates nothing more than being cornered by its own past decisions. A single yes today becomes a weapon tomorrow, but you gave him keys before. You trusted him before. You let him in before. Precedent turns into leverage, and leverage turns into endless negotiation. And then there's the optics that would force William and Catherine into a new public posture. Even if they said nothing, their silence would be interpreted. If they appeared supportive, it would look like unity. If they looked distant, it would look like division. If they tightened security or reduced visibility, it would look like fear. In royal life, you don't get to opt out of the story when the story is built around you. Harry receiving Windsor keys would instantly pressure the Wales household to respond not just privately, but through the way they show up, the way they schedule, the way they stand, the way they smile. The keys would become a public test of whether the future king and queen accept reintegration or resist it. That's why Camilla's resistance isn't just personal, it's strategic boundary defense. She understands that once access is granted, it becomes almost impossible to manage without humiliating someone later. And humiliation is dangerous because it creates retaliation. If Harry feels embraced and then later restricted, he becomes more volatile, more wounded, more likely to turn the experience into narrative fuel. From Camilla's perspective, stopping the keys early is containment. It prevents the palace from walking into a trap that would force them to choose between legitimacy and reversal. Security concerns are the shadow under every sentence in this story, not just physical security, information security. Leaks. Private details. Accidental overheard conversations that later become public framing. The palace treats proximity like a risk because proximity produces stories, and stories produce damage. If Harry is allowed to move more freely, the palace has to assume more opportunities for misunderstanding, misinterpretation, or deliberate narrative building. It's not that every moment would be dangerous. It's that one moment would be enough. Then comes the cliffhanger detail that makes the offer even more chilling. A restricted area clause was reportedly attached. That suggests the keys weren't simply keys, they were conditions disguised as generosity. Restricted access implies there were zones Harry still wouldn't be allowed to enter, areas where the palace draws the line because the risk is too high. And once you attach clauses to keys, you reveal the truth. This isn't a gift. It's controlled reintegration, monitored privilege, and a system designed to manage someone the palace doesn't fully trust. And once you understand what the keys unlock, Charles's offer stops looking like kindness and starts looking like a plan. Charles is accused of being soft, but insiders say this offer wasn't softness, it was strategy disguised as sentiment. A father extending mercy, yes, but also a king trying to control an unpredictable narrative. If Harry remains outside, he remains a wild card. If Harry returns with Windsor keys, he becomes managed, guided, contained. That's the chilling logic. This wasn't just welcome home. It was come back under the crown. Because Charles is torn in a way only a father king can be torn: grief, guilt, legacy, duty, all pulling in opposite directions at once. The grief is personal. A family fracture that has dragged on too long. A son who still carries the power to make headlines with a single sentence. The guilt is quieter but sharper. The feeling that if he doesn't offer something tangible, he will be remembered as the king who never tried hard enough. But the legacy pressure is ruthless. Charles knows the monarchy cannot afford a permanent, uncontrolled wildcard hovering outside its walls, turning every private moment into potential public theatre. So the offer, in this version of events, becomes a strategy: bring Harry closer, not to reward him, but to reduce future leaks by placing him inside a system that can monitor him, steer him, contain him. And that containment isn't just physical. It's narrative containment. When you're outside, you can speak freely, interpret freely, threaten freely. When you're inside, you're surrounded by protocol, agreements, expectations, and the silent pressure of don't embarrass the crown. That's why Windsor keys matter to Charles. Not because he wants Harry comfortable, but because he wants Harry tethered to the institution again. It's the old royal logic. Proximity isn't only privilege, it's control. Give someone access, and you also give yourself influence over their behavior. Keep them outside, and you lose the ability to manage the storm. Insiders whisper that a looming event forced Charles to seek unity optics, a moment on the calendar where division would look catastrophic, where the world would read every absence like an accusation. That's when advisors step in with their most persuasive argument: controlled reconciliation. Not a heartfelt reunion, a managed return with boundaries, clauses, and carefully staged appearances. And it's all fine image that can calm pressure without actually resolving the underlying wounds. Charles, desperate to steady the ship, listens. He believes he can choreograph the situation. He believes he can make a risky son safer by bringing him under the crown's umbrella. But he underestimates Camilla's resistance. Because Camilla isn't thinking like a grieving parent. She's thinking like a survivor of palace warfare, someone who understands that the moment you legitimize a rival narrative, you invite permanent instability. And the cliffhanger detail that makes this feel darker is the rumor that Charles promised Harry something beyond keys, something more meaningful, something that would signal not just access but position. Because keys can be explained away as family kindness. A bigger promise can't. A bigger promise would rewrite internal hierarchy, and that's exactly the kind of move that triggers Camilla's panic. But Camilla doesn't fear Harry's return as a son, she fears Harry's return as a symbol. Camilla doesn't fight with shouting, she fights with vetoes. And stopping Windsor keys is a veto that lands like a slap across the monarchy's face. Because it isn't just denying Harry access, it's publicly denying Charles's authority in the one arena he must control, who belongs near the crown. That's why the room freezes. Camilla's move isn't emotional. It's a boundary enforcement that tells everyone watching, Harry will not be legitimized on her watch, and she acts fast, cutting the offer before it becomes irreversible. That's the key detail. Because once a gesture like this is completed, reversing it creates humiliation and retaliation. Camilla knows that. She knows you don't give access and then take it back without paying a price. So she stops it at the threshold, where she can still frame it as caution rather than rejection, even though the impact feels like rejection. Her emotional core isn't simply dislike, it's fear of instability, fear of being undermined, fear that Harry's presence will shift the monarchy's narrative away from her legitimacy and toward a never-ending family conflict she can't control. She views Harry as a threat not only to peace, but to her standing. Because symbols matter in royal life, and Harry returning to Windsor with keys would symbolize something dangerous, that the crown is softening, that the exile is ending, that the outsider can become insider again. That symbolism would embolden factions. It would pressure William's household. It would invite interpretation that Camilla's influence is weakening, and she cannot allow that interpretation to harden into reality. There are whispers that Camilla has allies inside the household, people who prefer a hard boundary, people who fear the leak risk, people who understand how quickly access becomes vulnerability. They don't need to love Camilla to agree with her. They just need to believe that giving Harry keys is too risky to justify. And Harry, in that moment, learns the humiliation factor. He is still the outsider. Not because the family doesn't feel something, but because the institution refuses to place him back near its heart without a fight. Then the cliffhanger strikes. Camilla cites a security file as justification. That detail transforms her veto from personal to procedural, because if she is invoking security, she is building a case, not just blocking a gesture. A security file implies documented concerns, recorded risks, official reasoning that can be shown to advisors and used to silence objections. It's the most powerful weapon in the palace, not emotion, but paperwork. And if Camilla used a security file, it means she's not just blocking Harry, she's building a case against him. Even when William and Catherine aren't in the room, they shape the room. Because any move that restores Harry's access automatically pressures the future king and queen to respond. And insiders claim that pressure is exactly why the keys became volatile. If Harry gets Windsor keys, William's boundary looks weakened. If Harry is denied, Charles looks divided. This is the trap. Any choice creates a public story, and someone is trying to force Charles to pick. William's likely stance is simple on the surface and ruthless underneath: privacy, security, and trust first. Not because he enjoys punishment, but because he has lived through what happens when private family space becomes public narrative. He understands that access is never just access. It's opportunity. Opportunity for misunderstanding, for selective retelling, for headlines built from half-truths. And once a story exists, the monarchy doesn't control it, the world does. That's why William's boundaries aren't emotional fences, they're safety barriers. He would rather look cold than look careless, especially where his children's routines and his household's stability are concerned. Catherine, in this dynamic, isn't a passive figure waiting for decisions to be made above her. She is the protector of children and stability, the one who reads risk not as theory but as lived experience. She knows how quickly an innocent reintegration can pull the Wales family into a new storm, one where every look becomes analysis and every absence becomes a rumour. So even without speaking, her presence is felt. The palace knows that if the keys are offered, Catherine's circle tightens. If the keys are denied, Catherine's position strengthens. Either outcome becomes a signal about who truly sets the future tone of the monarchy. That's why Charles fears conflict with the Wales household more than he admits. A king can survive public criticism, but he cannot easily survive visible fracture with the heirs. If William and Catherine appear aligned against a decision made by Charles, the institution looks split down its most dangerous line: present reign versus future reign. And that split isn't just family drama, it's legitimacy tension. It invites questions, pressure, and a feeding frenzy of interpretation that makes the monarchy look unstable at precisely the moment it needs to look unshakable. Insiders whisper William demanded a no-surprises rule, no quiet offers, no private deals that later force him into public posture. Because surprises are how boundaries get bypassed. Surprise is how you wake up to a new reality already in motion. If Charles tried to move without informing William's camp, it would feel like a betrayal, not of Harry, but of trust between father and heir. And that is the palace fear in its purest form. Visible division threatens legitimacy. You can't sell unity while living fracture. You can't project stability while fighting about who holds a key. Then the cliffhanger lands like a sealed message sliding across a table. A note from William's camp allegedly arrives mid-discussion. Not a dramatic confrontation. A quiet intervention with massive weight. The kind of message that doesn't shout, but warns. It signals boundaries, consequences, and the reality that the Wales household will not be cornered into smiling through a decision that endangers their stability. And once that message lands, Charles realizes this isn't a family favor, it's a constitutional minefield. The palace can survive embarrassment. It can't survive exposure. That's why the Windsor keys aren't just about trust, they're about what might be repeated. Insiders claim the fear isn't that Harry would misuse access physically, but that access would become narrative fuel. Who was seen? What was overheard? What was misunderstood? What becomes a future headline? In royal life, proximity produces stories, and stories produce damage. Information security is the monarchy's true obsession, because information is what turns private life into public vulnerability. Staff fear private moments becoming bargaining chips, not necessarily because someone intends harm, but because proximity creates material. A comment overheard in a corridor. A meeting noticed without context. A face seen leaving a room at the wrong time. Those fragments don't need to be false to be dangerous. They only need to be incomplete. And when incomplete fragments reach the public, they become weaponized through interpretation. That's why the palace restricts access to limit the raw material available for future narratives. Protocols exist precisely to prevent unmonitored proximity. Access is restricted to reduce narrative risk, not because the palace lacks compassion, but because the palace has learned the hard lesson: once a story is loose, you can't catch it. That's why advisors argue, if we give keys, we lose control. Not control of Harry's emotions, control of the narrative ecosystem that grows around him. Giving keys would create a permanent stream of potential moments, and the palace knows it can't survive an endless drip of moments that invite controversy. So conditions begin to appear in the background like invisible chains, legal agreements, NDAs, restrictions on movement, rules about what can be photographed, what can be discussed, what can be shared. And that leads to the cliffhanger. A draft access agreement exists with harsh restrictions, which means the keys weren't meant to be pure reconciliation. They were meant to be controlled reintegration access on paper, supervision in practice, trust staged but not fully granted. And once restrictions are written down, the keys stop being a gift and become a test. This is where the story turns brutal, because once Camilla stops the keys, Charles has two choices: back down publicly and look controlled, or push forward and risk detonating his marriage. Insiders claim the argument isn't about Harry, it's about authority. Charles wants to decide who belongs. Camilla wants to decide what risks the crown can survive. And when those two instincts collide, the palace doesn't hear love. It hears war. Charles's pride and legacy anxiety rise fast, because a king cannot be seen as negotiable inside his own fortress. If he offers keys and gets overruled, the message to the household is devastating. The sovereign can be vetoed. That kind of weakness doesn't stay contained. It leaks into staff behavior, into advisor boldness, into factional games. And Charles, already haunted by the idea of being remembered as the king who couldn't steady his own family, feels the pressure of history like a weight on his chest. In his mind, this isn't just about a son, it's about whether the crown still commands obedience. Camilla frames her stance as institutional safety, and that framing is what makes it so hard to defeat. Because how do you argue against protection without sounding reckless? She doesn't need to call Harry names. She only needs to raise risk. She can point to instability, narrative danger, the possibility of private details becoming public fuel. She can invoke security files, protocol concerns, damage control, and suddenly the conversation shifts from family emotion to survival math. In royal life, survival math wins. That's why Camilla's veto hits like a blade. It's wrapped in reason, but it draws blood anyway. And when reason isn't enough, insiders whisper the threats begin. Not loud threats, royal threats. Resignation from events. Refusal to cooperate. Quiet sabotage through absence. The kind of retaliation that doesn't require shouting because it's delivered through withholding. If Camilla stops supporting certain appearances, the monarchy feels it instantly. If she refuses to play the unified front, Charles is forced to choose between personal war and public stability. And if she goes further, private retaliation, through alliances, through briefings, through selective influence, Charles suddenly faces an opponent who understands palace mechanics as well as he does. Fragments of the dispute, they say, are overheard. Not full sentences, just sharp edges, tone. Urgency. The unmistakable chill of a marriage colliding with monarchy. That's all it takes for panic to spread. Staff don't need details, they need signals. And the signal here is terrifying. The top of the institution is divided in real time, and division at the top makes everyone below start choosing sides. Some align with the king's authority. Some align with the queen consort's caution. Others align with whoever they believe will win. That is how palaces fracture quietly, efficiently, without anyone admitting it. Then comes the most dangerous possibility of all. Someone recorded or documented the dispute. A note, a memo, a summary for the file. A record meant for protection that becomes a weapon if it ever escapes. Because once a royal argument is documented, it can be leaked, quoted, used to humiliate, used to justify future decisions. Documentation turns private war into future leverage, and leverage is how palace conflicts never truly end. The cliffhanger lands with cold authority. Charles allegedly orders a review that sidelines Camilla temporarily. Not a public demotion, but an internal shift restricting influence, narrowing her reach, placing decisions back under offices loyal to the king. It's the kind of move that signals he won't be publicly overruled again. But it's also the kind of move that guarantees retaliation. Because Camilla won't interpret a review as neutral. She'll interpret it as a strike. But the most dangerous aftermath isn't the argument, it's what the key's decision forces Harry to do next. By the final stage, everyone understands. The Windsor keys weren't about a door, they were about a future. If Harry gets them, the monarchy signals reintegration. If he's denied, the monarchy signals permanent exile. Camilla's intervention may have prevented immediate chaos, but it also exposed a terrifying truth. The crown is not unified on Harry. And when unity breaks, every next move becomes a headline waiting to explode. The key's decision becomes a permanent boundary marker, whether the palace admits it or not. If Harry is stopped at this threshold, it tells the world and the family that the boundary is real, enforced, and unlikely to soften. If Charles keeps pressing for reintegration, it tells the world the king is willing to challenge internal resistance, even at the cost of domestic stability. Either path has consequences, and those consequences land emotionally first. Humiliation for Harry, resentment for Charles, hardened loyalties across the household, and a lingering sense that nothing is settled, only postponed. Practical consequences follow immediately. tighter access rules. New briefings that narrow who knows what. Security escalation that treats proximity as a controlled privilege rather than a family comfort. The motive becomes painfully clear: legitimacy, image control, and institutional survival. The palace can't afford a narrative where it looks like it rewards volatility. It also can't afford a narrative where a king looks powerless inside his own castle. That's why every decision feels like a trap, because it's not just about what is done, but what it signals. Public debate ignites as soon as the story breathes. Cruel denial versus necessary protection. A father's mercy versus a queen consort's caution. A monarchy that should heal versus a monarchy that must protect itself. And the more the public argues, the more pressure builds on the palace to clarify, which is exactly what the palace fears, because clarification invites questions. Questions invite contradictions, and contradictions invite more leaks. The viral question becomes unavoidable. Did Camilla protect the crown, or ignite the next internal war? Because stopping the keys might have prevented immediate chaos, but it also forced every faction to show itself. It revealed who wants Harry contained, who wants him restored, who fears him, who needs him, and who is willing to fight over access like it's oxygen. And just when you think the story ends with keys kept in a drawer, it doesn't, because the real fallout begins when Harry decides how to respond to being stopped. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.